for sale. Like to say a pleasant and hopefully fruitful good day to you. This is Owen McCafferty. I'm bringing this message to you on behalf of Professional Fusion. Our topic of conversation today is preparing for sale. A lot of times people think in a fit of desperation, usually preceded by the announcement by a key staff member or doctor in their practice that that person is leaving. No longer does the practice owner wish to continue. So in a fit of desperation and rather poor judgment, they desperately decide to sell. The theory being that if they could find a buyer who is foolish enough to buy their practice after a key producer just left, that boy, they are going to be in a good financial position. Nothing can be further from the truth. When you sell your practice as a going concern. That means that the personnel assemblage that was in place continues to stay in place, and that you have the capacity as seller to deliver the underlying value of the practice, the goodwill, which is defined as the excess earnings capitalized, to a new purchaser. The idea of caveat emptor, although has some play, there are representations that you make in the course of a transactional sale to a purchaser that would preclude you from the capacity of just running away, taking the money, and assuming that the new purchaser of the practice is foolish. So you have to have planning. The best time to sell is when you think that you don't want to sell, that everything is going smoothly, that the practice is growing, that you have in place systems and people that would help deliver the value of the asset. That is the time that you would consider selling. So it sounds like the idea of selling your practice has to have some forethought and planning, at least 3 years, preceding to the point of sale. Now, that doesn't guarantee you that the market is going to be friendly at that time. It further doesn't guarantee you that the practice that you knew 3 years ago was going to be the practice today. Things change, people change. So you have to have a whole slew of alternative plans in place in order to decide when and how to sell your practice. But the theory that I'm just going to sell the practice because I'm in a bad spot, or I'm tired, or I just heard that I had some pretty bad health issues that were announced to me by my physician, and I better do something now, that really doesn't bode well for the best practice sale. It requires thoughtful planning. The other issue is that if you plan 3 years from now to sell, and you do all the things that you should do to make the practice attractive to a new purchaser, then you may decide in that same 3-year period, gee whiz, things are going so well, why in the world would I want to sell my practice now? And a lot of practitioners are asking themselves that question as we speak. People that are in their late 60s to early 80s are deciding, gee whiz, maybe I should be holding on a little bit. Some are even saying, if I hold on for 5 to 7 years and then sell the practice at a distressed sale, then I'll still have a heck of a lot more in terms of economic benefit than if I was to sell today. And for the most part, they're absolutely right. Of course, you can't predict the future. You don't know how things are going to occur. We live in a wacky world right now, economically. It's a challenge in most of the English-speaking countries that the ability to assure an economic continuation may not necessarily be as assured as it was in times gone by. There's a lot of concern in terms of personnel assemblage, too. Do people want to work the way they used to work? They certainly want to get paid a heck of a lot more, but do they want to earn it? is your practice going to sustain the capacity for continuation in the face of adversity? So, in order to answer those questions, it's a good idea to start planning. Actually, 5 years would even be better than 3 years. 7 years would be better than 5 years. So the longer that you can plan towards an orderly progression. Small little practice tip, don't forget to constantly increase your fees at least at the same rate of increase as the consumer price index for wage earners, urban, plus about 2% for medical inflation is increased in your practice on a consistent basis. We recommend quarterly so that you're being fair to your patients and or clients in that cost is then borne gradually. So when someone comes into a practice and they come in a day before an increase, they're only going to be subjected to 1/4 of the rate of increase that they would have if you had raised your fees only annually. And that poor soul that came in the day after a fee increase is hit with a whopping 6, 7, 8% increase. Depends on what's going on with our inflationary factors right now. Remember, there's a big difference between inflation and price, and you certainly need to increase your prices. Now, why am I recommending that as part of this discussion about planning for the sale of your practice? Because a purchaser of your practice that doesn't see a consistent history of price increases for services and goods you provide becomes a little bit scared away from your practice because they think that your client base is not used to the normal adjustments that occur in any trade or business, or in your case, profession. So with that in mind, just a short tip, please plan at least 3 years ahead of time before you sell, and the longer the better. 3 to 5 is reasonable. 7 would be a pipe dream. But at least you're at the point where you are constantly thinking about that which is to be followed. And then finally, there's no disgrace in deciding not to sell, but rather enjoy the fruits of your labor with a well-managed practice that is systemically sound, whose personnel assemblage is loyal and devoted and inspired to follow through in best practices in medicine and surgery. This is Owen McCafferty. I want to say thank you very much. We'll have plenty more of these discussions in the days to come.